Welcome to De-Stress Your Business, the podcast where we show you how to get incredible results in your business without constant stress. I'm Alexis Kingsbury, a serial entrepreneur and founder at AirManual. Now, today I have the pleasure of hosting a true master of cashflow, MC Laubscher. He's the creator and host of the top-rated Cashflow Ninja podcast and also the president of Producers Wealth, a firm that's dedicated to holistic wealth creation strategies. He's also an investor and a business owner. And into our conversation today, we'll uncover the ninja techniques that can be used to optimize cash flow, to protect your wealth, and seize growth opportunities. MC, it's fantastic to have you here. Thank you.
Fantastic to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to our conversation.
Brilliant. Well, let's start by perhaps if you could share, MC, perhaps a pivotal moment or a story from your journey that truly sort of defines and explains your passion for cash flow and wealth creation.
Yeah, I think so. I'm originally from South Africa. I grew up in South Africa during a very interesting time period, obviously in the country's history. I just remember, and I was, in my young teens. So there was a lot of uncertainty. There was a lot of unknowns. A lot of people were completely out of their comfort zone. There was a time of like a period, I would say for like 2 to 3 years that I can still remember as just a time that people didn't really know what to expect, what's coming next, like what does the future look like, and so forth. And this actually comes into my story a little bit later, where I felt like that experience gave me a pretty good, it really, really gave me a big advantage going through that as a young man later in life, and especially in business and investing. But from South Africa, I went to the United States around about 2001. I played sports up until 2007 there, but I traveled, and while when you're traveling on sports teams, you get into all kinds of stuff, right? So you can get into video games and books and that kind of stuff. I was one of those guys that got into reading history and economic books. It's my major in college as well. And one day, my mom actually gave me a copy of Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad. I took action right away, bought my first investment property 6 months later. I had tenants in the investment property. They were paying me rent, covering all of the expenses associated with the property and the management. And at the end of the month, there was cash flow available, money left over. And it was a light bulb moment for me, because I started to see that this could really work. I know it's in books, but until you do it yourself and you see it firsthand, it's all just a theory, right? At that point, I started to think bigger and think like, well, if I have one and this is how it works, like how many of these can I do? And then, of course, you have to build a business in the real estate space, right? And approach it as a business. It's not just investments. And especially if you wanted to grow and scale a real estate portfolio, you have to build a business to be able to do that, just as you build a business for it to be able to be scalable. So what that then turns into is not so much the cash flow, but also the cash flow efficiency of the business. And that served me pretty well. So we looked at a lot of the cash flow efficiencies and so forth. And that, I've been involved in many other businesses since that, startup businesses. I've failed horribly and miserably and have some relative success in the other ones. I started a podcast in 2016. And it was basically a passion project, and it's called Cashflow Ninja. And it was basically just a passion project to share different types of business and investing strategies. So we covered everything from business, real estate, commodities, cryptocurrencies, paper assets, and so forth. And I mean, it turned into a pretty decent show pretty quickly, which was very unexpected. We were just having a lot of fun, and we have, before we know it, it's millions of downloads around the world, 180 countries, and we've built an education business out of it, where we now have 3 podcasts on that platform. We have books talking about all the different cash flow strategies and niches that we've reviewed, and masterminds. So that's been a lot of fun. And then I'm also involved in a company called Producers Wealth, which I founded. It's an insurance brokerage focusing on very advanced life insurance strategies for people in the United States. So we do that, and we started it completely virtually. So it was a complete digital brokerage, which, now everybody's like, oh, wow, this is great. When I started that in 2014, you were the creepy guy on the internet doing life insurance, right? It's funny how the world kind of catches up on certain trends. But it's a lot of fun. And one of the reasons why I shared my story from South Africa as a young man going through a time of turbulence, a little bit of chaos, uncertainty. You didn't really know what was coming next. In business and investing, that being comfortable with being uncomfortable is like, it could be construed almost as a superpower, right? And that's helped me on the sports field. It's helped me in business and investing, and especially in the world today that we're navigating. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of chaotic things happening globally in our environment constantly. So I think being uncomfortable is going to serve everyone, if you're a business owner and an investor, very, very well in the coming years.
Yeah, love that. And I think that's something that I definitely have seen in so many areas of business and life, right? That ability to be uncomfortable and know that that's what you're meant to do. It's often talked about in like in the world of investment as, where if everyone else is zigging, you zag, it's because ultimately that's where the opportunities are. And that is uncomfortable, and you do have to get kind of comfortable with it. And the same for when you're looking at long-term investment, you have to be comfortable with the fact that early on, it might in the short term look quite bad and be quite painful and sort of stay in the course. And so there's all these hard, almost paradoxes of life, but particularly investment and running your finances. Are there any other like counterintuitive principles that you've found to be consistently effective in creating wealth, and or any sort of real world stories of where you've seen those kind of come into play?
Yeah, being a contrarian in business and investing is going to serve you really well. And to your point, if everybody's going one way, if you're standing on the opposite in the beginning, people will look at you like you're like a little bit crazy, right? A crazed lunatic. Yeah. But eventually, for most of the time, in my experience, and I've read a lot of autobiographies and biographies, and the story is very, very similar. Most of the time, standing on the opposite side of where everyone else is going to serve you very, very well, and you're going to end up being on the right side in an environment or in a marketplace. So being a contrarian right now, I'll share with you a kind of a current scenario. So we've seen obviously a lot of very, very disruptive kind of stuff happening since 2020. And in 2020, we put out a lot of controversial information and podcasts saying, like, look, this was going to happen, because the underlying thing happening globally is that technology is increasing at such a speed and at such a pace that I don't think people understand it or can fathom it. Some are getting an idea right now with AI, just playing around with it. And this is the stuff that's available to everyone, right? We're not even talking about what's in the labs. So this technology thing is something that we've been keeping an eye on, and this brings about a lot of disruption, which then manifests itself differently in the marketplace. It was, I think it was Grant Cardone that said we're living on an economic like this is an economic planet. So everything that happens with an economy that's disruptive manifests itself in different ways, and that's why you're seeing, globally a lot of populist movements and so forth. So I think, like, from a contrarian standpoint, and thinking as a contrarian, since the great financial crisis, right, the GFC as they call it now, in our world in 2008 and 2009, and having been a business owner investor during that time, better than any college education or any MBA program, that period of time was. And a lot of lessons learned, a lot of stuff done correctly, a lot of stuff done incorrectly, but we got through that. I always say it would make for a better story if you tell people that you lost everything in 2008, 2009, and look at me now. But that was not the case. Definitely, everybody got a couple of knocks, but you plug on. We've had a fantastic run. I would say that kind of bottomed out around 2011, 2012. From an investment cycle. So at the point of the most amount of pain, that is when the professional investors come in. That's where you get a lot of business owners take advantage there too, because they know that this is bottomed up. This economic cycle is bottomed up. This is the time to really be aggressive in the marketplace, because everybody's very, very fearful, right? Warren Buffett said to be fearful when everyone is greedy and be greedy when everyone is fearful. The Rothschild family is famous for their quotes about buying when there's blood in the streets, right? In stock markets. So that's when professionals go to work. And that's when they really, really get in and start to play big. And then you've had a run up now. I would say it topped at around 2020, this current cycle of where we're at. And I mean, obviously 2012, the professionals comes in. Like by 2015, 2016, the market has turned. Everybody's getting excited. 2018, you've got now everybody's moving to the one side, as you mentioned, right? Where just the professional guys are standing by themselves, the contrarians alone. Now the entire market has moved that way. 2020, 2021. Obviously, there was a lot of other influences and a lot of other factors to consider, but there was money creation and currency creation globally, unlike we've seen before. So that even took it to the next level. You had euphoria, and it was just interesting to watch what a lot of professional investors do at that time. A lot of them exited. If you look at what if you look at what they're doing now, not only are they exiting, but they're hedging. So we would say that the market topped at 2020. And now again, when everybody was excited about an asset class being real estate, being the market, being, cryptocurrency and so forth, it's time to be a contrarian again. And go to the other side of it and saying, this is a cycle, just like the sun comes up and it goes down and it's nighttime, or the four seasons. You're not negative or pessimistic or optimistic or overly optimistic. It's just you see what's in front of you and you play it differently. So in 2012 was a fantastic time to aggressively chase yields and grow and scale businesses. Now, at the time of recording, in 2023 is a great time for capital preservation and becoming very efficient in your business. The economy, the real economy, is not even softening; it's worsened, right? And you have to be cognizant of the lens through which you view the world, and especially the current world. Just because definitions change, of recessions, for example, doesn't mean that it's not a recession. So we looked at stuff and we looked at the economy slowing down, and obviously they changed the metrics by which this is now what the terminology of what type of environment it is. But we looked at this and said, this is slowing down. This is recession territory. The economy is slowing down, and now as I've shared, we're a contrarian on the other side. So, for investors, it's a time for capital preservation. For business owners, the same thing, capital preservation and cash flow efficiency is big. So to get ahead of the crowd, you need to be as efficient from a cash flow standpoint in your personal business and investing economy. So look inside your business of where there's inefficiencies, which when the good times run, you can probably, you could still have them in there, and it's not going to make that big of a difference. But when there's a crunch coming a little bit ahead, then that could make a massive difference, and that could provide some liquidity and cash flow in your business to get you to plug through a more challenging economy.
Yeah, nice. And I think that's a really smart way of looking at it, both in terms of, as you say, like taking that contrarian view to see where everyone else seems to be feeling about the market, and as a result, deciding, okay, I'm going to make sure that if everyone's buoyant and euphoric about this, I'm going to make sure that I'm protected and in a good position to go into the next stage. And I think that's really strong. But I also really like your point around what does that actually mean as an investor, as a business? Because often what you'll hear is things like, oh, well, this is a good time to be holding cash. Like, whereas before you'd be saying, oh, yeah, invest, buy stuff. It's, you're getting it, there's blood in the streets, therefore invest. And right now you might say, actually, you want to be conserving cash. And a lot of people say, well, that's all well and good, but I haven't got any. Like, it's been a tough time. We've had COVID, we've had inflation, we've had, all these sorts of things. I haven't got piles of cash that I'm sitting on, and building them suddenly is very tough. And I love your point around, therefore, the opportunity right now is to look at your cash flow efficiency or your operational efficiency. And I think there are a couple of pieces in there. One is, in my experience, shine a spotlight on something and it generally improves. So if you make it your objective in the company that you're going to be able to do more with the same resource, or you're even going to be able to scale back your resource and still achieve the same things, just shining a spotlight on those processes and documenting them, and as a result, like working out, oh, hang on, we don't need to do it 3 different ways and here's some waste, I think is powerful. But also, as you mentioned before, around technology that we have now that we didn't have a year, 2 years ago, means that there's opportunity for doing that now more than ever, right? So I absolutely love that as a concept. Something I also want to ask you is around, on your podcast on Cashflow Ninja, you've interviewed numerous experts across a variety of different areas. I know it's hard because there's so many, but are there any strategies or approaches that have stood out for you from that's been perhaps a game changer for you personally, and why?
I think like one of the things that really have stayed with me is I had a great interview with Jim Rogers, which is the legendary investor. And he was talking about business and investing. And he was saying just how we overcomplicate things so much. And he likes it very, very simple. And, one of the things that he said about, business, if you can explain it to a 5-year-old, it's very simple, then you have a better chance of succeeding. He said in meetings where people talk about business opportunities, and it's like he doesn't even know, after the person that's sharing this opportunity has spoken for an hour, he's like, I'm still trying to figure out what they do. Where it's simple businesses and simple business models, it makes so much sense. And especially in struggling economies, when times get tougher, if you can simplify things, it's great. I mean, we were looking at we look at a ton of business opportunities now, because to your point, some of and this is the one thing that I want to leave with your listeners too. During tough times is actually when the fortunes are made and created. If you look back in the history, go back to the Great Depression and you look at all the businesses. I mean, people can just go online and do their research of the businesses that were created, especially in the United States during the Great Depression. It'll blow you away. We don't even have to go that far away or far back, right? Let's go back to the last great financial crisis, the GFC, 2008, 2009. Uber came out of that. Airbnb came out of that. That whole sharing economy, there were so many businesses in the sharing space came out of that. So there were people that looked at the environment and say, there's opportunity here because of all these challenges and problems and so forth. So so to businesses, simplify, keep it simple. And we look at businesses and it needs to be so simple. I mean, you want to take away all the levels of complexity now, because when things are tough and you've got a turbulent environment, you want it simple. One of the opportunities that we look at, for example, for some reason, I don't know why, but car washes in the United States continue to do well. And if you look historically, even during slowing economies, I mean, they still do well. And I mean, I was blown away when you look at all of the data that's available and the metrics and so forth. And if you think about it, everybody's going to have a dirty car. Maybe some people wash it themselves during a tougher economy, but for the most part, if you have a membership subscription at a very low entry point and your business model revolves around automating the whole thing, it's still a very viable business. And look at that business. You got a dirty car, I'll wash it for you. Boom. There you go.
Yeah.
And you pay me at the end of it. Very simple. And from investing, Jim Rogers said the same thing from how investors overthink things. And he said, MC, I like to just wait in a room and sit until the money's just lying in the corner for me. And then I go over there and I just pick it up. That's what I do. Because I asked him about his investment strategy. And so what he was basically just saying is, people are trying to look for angles and gimmicks and, this strategy and so forth. He just looks at assets that are so hated, so undervalued that nobody wants to touch. Again, that blood in the street scenario, that scenario where nobody wants to get involved in it. And then he goes and picks it up and picks up a whole bunch of it. And that's kind of served him well. So, that's what I would share. This, just simplify it. And, again, contrarian, I guess, is the theme of his investment strategy. Like we shared, of how, like I shared, there's cycles. They will continue, just like the sun comes up and goes down and the seasons change. The same thing's going to happen in economies. So you just have to adjust your game. And there's opportunities in all of them. And now's a great time, to your point. A lot of people say, well, how do I position? Cash is a very good one. You want to have liquidity when nobody else has liquidity. That's one of the big lessons from 2008, 2009 that I would share.
And diving into that then, because something that's a relatively simple thing that businesses can do and to help them with liquidity is to essentially kind of plug their cash flow leaks, right?
Yep.
Can you perhaps share a time when perhaps you've helped a business to discover and plug a significant leak, or where you've done that in a business that you own or that you've invested in or anything like that? And what was then the impact to their bottom line?
Yeah, I've got a great one, a great story for you, a case study, a real life one that happened in one of our businesses. So one of the businesses that we're invested also in and own is historic resorts in the United States. It's got to have a mystique about it. It has to have some unique characteristics. So one of the resorts, for example, is the third oldest winery in the United States. It's in New Jersey. And it still has the ability, because this is before all the labeling rights and so forth, you could still produce American champagne legally. There's 3 wineries that's allowed this in the United States. So you can drink American champagne, which is a kind of a unique characteristic about it. Yep. It's a winery, but obviously we turn it into a wedding venue. There's a golf course, there's a hotel and so forth. So there's a couple of these properties that we have. The one thing that's fascinating about resorts is the amount of equipment that needs to be leased for many different things, whether it's weddings, whether it's outdoor festivals, because we have a lot of live music on a lot of these properties and so forth. It's staggering. So in reviewing just financials for our properties, we looked at this and go, this is kind of insane. The amount of money, cash flow that's just being leaked to another outside third party for equipment rentals. So we then formed another entity, a company, bought all the equipment ourselves. We also had investors that invest with us. And so on that side, setting up a separate entity, buying all the equipment in the United States. I'm not sure how it works in other countries, but you get a very, very nice tax benefit from doing that because you can depreciate the equipment.
Yeah.
So in the tax code in the US, you're actually encouraged to do that because if you're buying equipment you're using in your business, you're generating more revenue and there's more tax revenue for the government. So so we took the equipment, we put it into an entity, we benefited from the tax benefits from it, but separately from the tax benefits, all of the cash flow that you were paying to outside vendors and third parties from leasing it is now going back into an entity which you now have ownership of, and the same group that has an ownership in the resorts. So now we're keeping that cash flow in our pool. So that's one way of doing it. If you're another thing that I'll share that I do too is when you're a business that uses a lot of software, there's so much overlap right now in the software world. And especially now with the AI stuff coming out, it's just kind of crazy. And that's hard to just stay on top of because there's something else. I feel like every week there's a new app coming out now in AI. But if you like software is one area where if you can take everything into one piece of software where you now like a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pieces of software, that's another way to plug plug some cash flow leaks. And then I would also say from a cash flow efficiency, not just plugging it, is managing just payables and receivables right now. And this is a lesson that we learned from COVID as well during because there was, I don't know, I'm not quite sure how it was in Europe and in the UK, but in the United States too, there was a time period where folks legally, the government signed a mandate that people didn't have to pay rent, right? So kind of like so there was a time period for a number of months where they were kind of given a pause because of the environment at that stage. Now, if you have a very large real estate portfolio, well, that could be challenging right there. So very good operators and business owners got in front of that. So what you can do to get in front of that is offering certain discounts and do certain incentives for people to pay their rent and still pay their rent on time. And because of that, being proactive when that happened, because as soon as that, I believe it was a mandate, there's a lot of different terminology for all these things, but as soon as that came through, we try to get ahead of that and we were proactive. So when you look at how the properties performed on their financials, there wasn't a huge drop off because yes, we had to make some concessions. Yes, there's some discounts, but you were still collecting rent at that time, where people that didn't, they only woke up 2 to 3 months into this when they started to see their financials. They were in big trouble. So I would say the same thing for business owners right now. If it's a slowing economy, look at your payables and receivables and figure out too, especially if there's a 30 to 60 to 90 days, there's different payment terms, of course, in different businesses all over the world. But look at what you can do there to incentivize people to get payments into you sooner. Because as things get tougher and tougher, that's just gonna get tougher. So that's another way of increasing cash flow efficiency. Yes, you might have to make concessions. Yes, you might have to offer some discounts, but at least you're getting ahead of all the stuff and you're getting some cash flow in, which is the lifeline and the lifeblood of a business.
Yeah, really, really nice. And so when you've seen those strategies go in place, what's kind of as you say, it drops down to the bottom line when you do this kind of stuff. What's been the scale of the impact that you've seen? Because I've worked with some businesses where, they've been in trouble in terms of their cash flow, and we look at it and we go, okay, well, a few changes to the processes here on accounts payable, a few changes here on accounts receivable, a few changes here in terms of how they're managing their costs. And the impact has like taken them from 500,000 in the red to being like 2-3 million in the black, like with they're significant changes in relative terms, but it's like relatively few. Like, what's been your experience of that with the businesses that you've worked with?
Yeah, I haven't seen the latest updates of that example that I gave you, but that amounts to several millions of dollars,
Yeah,
over the
that's
course
what I
of.
figured.
Yeah, it's not small change. And the nice thing about that too is because of how the tax code is structured in the US is that you can do this all over again in a number of years. I believe it's 5. Not a CPA or a tax strategist, but around about like in 5 years you can buy more equipment and do the same thing over again. So so it has a profound impact. And on the real estate example that I gave you, that's the difference between getting in trouble with lenders. I mean, you could really, you could put the asset that you own at that stage at risk and be at risk of losing that asset if you don't control those cash flows. So I think being proactive, seeing what's happening out there, and just recognizing things for what they are and not what we want them to be. I think that's another thing that I think is going to serve you well this year and in the coming years. I would say at least 2 to 3 years. If you look at previous cycles, there's of course emerging technologies, as we've said too, that's going to
Sure.
that you and staying on the cash flow efficiency one, I didn't even bring that up. There are so many AI apps right now that can be utilized for cash flow efficiency, time efficiency. Someone shared an AI application with me the other day, just of how the AI will reorganize your entire calendar to make sure that you don't have dead space in your calendar, and they would reschedule all of your appointments and send email to the folks, that notifying them that is it okay if we can reschedule this meeting and so forth, which is kind of crazy. So if they just think of from a time management aspect, they can do that. I'm sure there's a ton of apps. I haven't gone down that rabbit hole. That's still something that I will do, that could do the same thing for business owners and investors when it comes to cash flow efficiency.
That's cool. Yeah, I agree. I think the landscape out there is changing so quickly with these AI tools. Like what you can do in terms of time efficiency, etc., is very powerful. There's pieces now coming around cash flow efficiency. One that's really struck me is how, because of almost how easy it is to build front ends on AI back ends, we're seeing so many, like literally thousands of these like AI apps pop up. And it reminds me a little bit of the early days of iPhone and Android apps, where you had apps that largely do things that you'd really just like to be able to do with your phone. Like, do you remember the days of Torch? Like, that was an app that you could buy for like $1, or I think it may have even started off more expensive than that, which literally goes, yeah, what we're going to use is your flash from your camera, and this app turns it on, and you can use that as a torch. And like, people are spending money on that. Whereas, of course, now you just take it for granted that that's a feature that's built into your phone. And I think we're going to see that even faster with AI, where you get these tools like tools for cash flow, improving your cash flow efficiency, and you can totally imagine that AI just gets built into whatever you're already using, like built into your bookkeeping and accounting tool, right? Or into your sales system or something to kind of leverage that. But regardless of whether you're using a new AI tool or whether you're utilizing AI features that come available in existing tools that you have, like the power of being able to use that. Like for us at AirManual, for one of the challenges that our customers have is, okay, I want to document these processes. In some cases, we know what the process should look like. In some cases, we're not sure. And as a result, we're building right now, be releasing soon, like the ability to create a process based on a clip from AI that uses the context that it's got to then give you a really good starting point. And I think those are examples, and we're going to see that in like all the tech that we're using basically allows us to either be more time efficient or more cash efficient or whatever. And so, yeah, you've kind of got to be on the lookout for these. I'm also aware that you've shared numerous examples now where opportunities have arisen from challenges, whether it's challenges in the wider economy, challenges for a specific business, or just identifying a cash flow leak. Are there any examples of perhaps a specific example of a business that you've worked with and how it's had to pivot during a crisis, perhaps particularly where cash flow was at risk, and as a result unlocked a massive growth opportunity?
I could share a really good one with you, and this is also sticking on the example that I shared with resorts. So we have we have a fantastic operator, and he's just a partner he's just on top of this stuff. So when the country and the economy was shut down and locked down, obviously that's going to pose a massive challenge for any business owner, and it was for many business owners, right? Kind of like something that came out of from nowhere. And now, we had resorts, which means we had hotels, restaurants, a wedding venue, and you're like, wow, this is going to be kind of challenging. At first you're kind of like, well, how do you pivot from this? And then eventually coming up with ideas. And this was his idea and his wife's idea, is when you look at the regulations that was what was put in place, it still allowed for outside activities. So, and this was something that came about. I mean, we started an outdoor kind of scene during the summer with live music and so forth, and stations that folks can come. So everything that used to be inside was now basically outside. You could do wine tasting outside and so forth. So people were basically, claustrophobic, stuck in one place for a while. So they wanted to get out, and they could get out, and they could come to the property within their comfort levels and enjoy, a meal and wine and so forth, and listen to live music. Well, that kind of moved into the winter, where my partner's wife's idea was to create this entire winter pop-up village, like on the property, because it's a decent sized property. And they did that, and we put an ice skating rink in there, different like kind of stations, and it was just, it was spectacular. It almost looked like this little winter village, somewhere in Europe. So and this became a main attraction for folks in that area, and this was never part of the business plan. So when the economy started opening back up and everything went back to normal, now you have this additional kind of feature that you were forced into, which is now one of the main attractions in the winter for this property. So we still have the ice skating rink. We still do all of like this winter pop-up village with wine and, food and so forth. So it's been, fascinating at that time. We didn't really know how that was going to work out, but it worked out really, really well. And it's become a mainstay now. It's now a feature of that property. So that, I would say, that's one of the big ones where you really, really had to dig really deep and pivot. I would say another example that I would share with folks is, and this is what I learned from a mentor of mine, and this is a lesson that I learned in one of the insurance business that we have, is one of the things is in the information age, which we were in, to have a competitive advantage, you have to be in business 24/7, 365, which was a very tough concept for folks. So to understand, because that'll really give you a competitive advantage. So I looked at that and I said, well, instead of saying, well, that I can't do that, well, how can I have my business running, which is digital, 24/7, 365. So we invested a lot in the learning curve of utilizing sales funnels. Because a sales funnel, which everybody's probably heard of Russell Brunson and ClickFunnels and so forth, that we added that element to all of our businesses, because now our business was open regardless of what time of the day, open for business, where someone would go to our website or find one of our landing pages and they would watch a sales presentation. They would book a call, and regardless of what time of the day it is. So that was huge. And I mean, I love the proof of concept. When I went to go visit family in South Africa, and we were sitting in the vineyard drinking wine basically all day, I came back, logged in to see what was happening with the business, and you could just see all these people. I believe in one day it was 45 people that came through our sales funnel, watched the presentation, and we had 13 calls booked from that day for consulting with my company. So that made me realize that, yeah, you just have to, and for 365 days a year, you can be open. And by the way, a lot of our traffic, which is also interesting, in the United States comes over holidays. We get traffic spikes to our businesses because people are so busy. So now they have some time, so they've got let's just say Thanksgiving, which is a huge holiday in the United States. And all of a sudden people are on now watching like a 20 to 30 minute sales presentation and booking calls over that weekend. And I'll add to that. So you kind of almost have to be like a tech company. You had to be a tech company. And now I would say, this is probably something to look at in the future. I could see how people would say in a year from now, not only do you need to be a tech company and be open 365 days a year, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, but you also have to be an AI company, in some way, shape, or form. So I could kind of see that transformation, going where most companies needed to have a tech aspect to it too. And you're going to have to need a AI aspect to it in the future.
Yeah, in some way, there'll be some aspect of your business where you're attempting to deliver value to your clients, where either you can do a better job of that by leveraging AI, or you can do the same job of it, but significantly cheaper. And if you're not already looking at where that is in your business right now, it's probably a good time to start. I'm conscious that as we start to come up for time, I'm thinking that for listeners who are perhaps eager to take action now on some of the things that we've talked about, I'm conscious that there's little things that people can do that can deliver outsized positive results. And so it'd be really interesting to hear, based on your experiences, perhaps either a quick story of one of those, or the other angle I was considering going down is, we haven't talked a lot about why Ninja when it comes to Cashflow Ninja. What's the approach? And I suspect that we can probably combine those two things about how you can be agile and work like a ninja and get some outside results. So I've set you quite a hard challenge there, MC, but close us out with an answer to that.
Yeah. So the Ninja is, my father's actually a pretty well-known martial artist that travels around the world teaching martial arts. He's kind of he's a beast. He's 75 years old, trains every single day, still does clap push-ups, and he's just an unstoppable force. But one of the things that I learned from him is the mindset in martial arts, and especially his type of more specific martial art of traditional karate, is he tries to pursue excellence daily. So he never feels that he's arrived in excellence. I think for business owners and investors, that's a very good mindset to have, that every single day you get up and you just try to become better in business and investing. I think that sometimes when you feel like you've got things figured out, that's probably where something's going to come and knock you off your pedestal, right? Rightfully so. So it helps you stay humble. It helps you stay focused. It helps you get up daily and just become better in business, better in investing. And you are trying to pursue excellence, which, the goal is never to get it, because it's unattainable. The best business owners and investors have never, gotten there. So they just continue to pursue it too. So that's kind of the mindset behind that. And then I think one of the
I
questions.
think I think that answers the question there, MC. I think that's absolutely spot on, because I think that answers my brief of explain the ninja bit, and then for me, the big one thing that anyone listening can do is shifting that mindset, and particularly the focusing on the excellence, knowing that it's impossible to do it all the time in every aspect, but at the same
Yep.
time, holding a mindset of doing it is one little thing that we can all do and get some outsized positive results. So
Yep.
absolutely love that. Thank you, MC. And thank you so much for joining me. For people who would like to learn more, hear more of your stories, hear more of the great insights that both you and guests on your show have shared, where's the best place for people to check you out and learn more?
Cashflowninja.com. So we do, like I said, we talk a lot about business, also investing, and we've got a ton of resources there. Of all the folks that we've interviewed in different cash flow niches, whether it be real estate, very interesting businesses, AI businesses, whether it be commodities, gold, silver, oil, even whiskey these days, fine art, fine
I'm keen.
wines, and so forth. And then obviously a ton of paper assets too. Cashflowninja.com. Everything that we do is there.
Fantastic. Well, I'm both keen in both investing in and consuming wine and whiskey. So next time you're in the UK, MC, give me a shout. But thank you very much for that. Really, really appreciate it. And in terms of working on some of the areas that we've also alluded to, so one area we talked about AI quite a bit and how to leverage that. If you're a business leader who's looking to leverage that with your team, do check out the guide that we wrote over at AirManual, the Business Leader's Guide to Using AI and ChatGPT, which looks like this. And that's available at airmanual.link/AI/ebook. We also wrote a guide as well for business leaders on how to improve their cash flow. We talked a bit about earlier about shining that spotlight on your cash flow processes, on accounts receivable, payable, and so on. You can check that out at airmanual.link/cashflow/ebook. But otherwise, thank you so much, MC, for joining me. To everyone else, please do subscribe to the podcast to hear more guidance on how to scale your business without stress. And if you really want to help out, please do share this episode on your social media with your friends. Give us a review, all that kind of stuff. We'd really, really appreciate it. Otherwise, until next time, have fun.